8 years ago, two sisters vanished after a movie night, leaving behind a trail of popcorn and a town frozen in grief. The police searched every corner of Willow Creek, but the girls were gone swallowed by the night. Now, a single clue has drawn them back to the old house, to the attic, where secrets fester like damp rot. What they find will unravel everything. The summer of 2017 was thick with heat, the kind that clung to your skin and made the air feel like a living thing, heavy and restless. Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the crook of Pennsylvania's rolling hills, was the sort of place where everyone knew your name and your business. The Harper family was no exception. Ellen Harper, a single mother with a laugh that could light up a room, lived in a modest 2-story house on Maple Street with her daughters, Clara and Sophie. Clara was 12, all elbows and freckles, with a sharp wit that made her seem older than her years. Sophie, barely 9, was her shadow-quiet, dreamy, always clutching a sketchbook filled with fantastical drawings of creatures she swore lived in the woods behind their house. That July night was supposed to be ordinary. Ellen had rented a stack of DVDs from the local library, old classics like The Princess Bride and Labyrinth, the girls' favorites. They'd made a ritual of it, these movie nights, complete with a fort of blankets and a bowl of popcorn, so Bigot spilled over the edges. The living room glowed with the flicker of the TV, and the sisters' laughter echoed through the open windows, drifting into the humid night. Ellen, exhausted from her shift at the diner, had kissed them goodnight. Around 10 p.m., trusting Clara to herd Sophie to bed when the credits rolled, she'd locked the doors, checked the windows, and fallen asleep to the hum of the air conditioner. When Ellen woke at dawn, the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest, warning you something's wrong before your mind catches up. The blanket fort was still there, popcorn scattered across the rug like tiny stars. But Clara and Sophie were gone. Their beds were untouched, their shoes still by the door. Ellen's screams woke the neighbors, and by noon, Willow Creek was a hive of flashing lights and grim-faced officers. The investigation was relentless at first. The police combed the house, the yard, the woods. They interviewed neighbors, teachers, even the librarian who checked out the DVDs. Clara's best friend, Mia, swore she'd seen nothing unusual when she'd stopped by earlier that evening to drop off a comic book. The girl's father, long out of the picture, was tracked down. In Ohio, and cleared within hours. There were no signs of forced entry, no ransom notes, no witnesses. Just a half-eaten bowl of popcorn and a DVD still spinning in the player. The case grew cold faster than anyone expected, and Willow Creek settled into a mournful limbo. The Harper girls' faces plastered on faded posters that curled at the edges. 8 years later, in the gray drizzle of June 2025, Detective Rachel Klein stood at the foot of the Harper house's creaking staircase, her flashlight cutting through the dust motes that danced in the attic's gloom. The house had been sold years ago, after Ellen moved away, unable to live with the ghosts of her daughters. The new owners, a young couple named the Wilsons, had called the station that morning, their voices shaking. They'd found something. In the attic, a child's drawing, tucked behind a loose board, with Sophie's name scrawled in crayon. It was a sketch of a creature with too many eyes, its claws dripping red. The Wilsons hadn't known about the Harper case when they bought the house, but the drawing had sent them spiraling into the town's dark history. Now Rachel was here, her partner, Detective Mark Torres, at her side, both of them staring up at the attic hatch, like it was a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Rachel wasn't from Willow Creek. She'd transferred from Pittsburgh 2 years ago, drawn to the quiet after a career spent chasing urban nightmares. But the Harper case had haunted her from the moment she'd read the file. The lack of evidence, the absence of motive, It was a puzzle with no edges, no starting point. She'd spent late nights poring over the old reports, the grainy photos, of Clara's gap-toothed smile and Sophie's wide, curious eyes. Something about the case felt personal, though she couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way Ellen's voice cracked in the recorded interviews, or the way the town still whispered about the girls like they were folklore, not flesh and blood. Torres nudged her, his voice low. "You sure about this?" The Wilsons said, "They didn't touch anything, but this place has been empty for years. Could just be junk." Rachel shook her head, her jaw tight. "It's Sophie's drawing. The handwriting matches the samples in the file. This isn't junk." She climbed the ladder first, the rungs groaning under her weight. The attic smelled of mildew and old wood, the air thick with the weight of neglect. Her flashlight swept. Across boxes, a broken rocking horse, a cracked mirror propped against the wall. The Wilsons had barely used the space, too spooked by the creaks and shadows. Rachel's beam caught the loose board they'd described, tucked in the far corner, where the roof sloped low. She crouched, her gloved fingers prying it free. Behind it was a small hollow, just big enough for a child to hide something precious. The drawing was there, creased and yellowed, but unmistakable. Sophie's creature stared back at her, its red claws vivid against the faded paper. "There's more," Torres said, peering over her shoulder. He pointed to a bundle of papers tied with a rubber band, half hidden in the same hollow. Rachel's pulse quickened as she pulled them out. Letters, dozens of them, written in a child's shaky hand. Clara's, she realized, recognizing the loopy cursive from the case file. The first one was dated July 15th, 2017, the day after that. "Girls disappeared. Dear Mom," it began. "We're okay, but we can't come home yet. Sophie's scared, but I'm keeping her safe. Don't tell anyone. They're watching." Rachel's breath caught. She handed the letter to Torres, who read it in silence, his face darkening. The other letters were similar short, cryptic, always pleading for secrecy. Some mentioned the woods or the man with no face. Others were just fragments, as if Clara had been too scared to finish. The last one, dated August 2nd, 2017, ended mid-sentence. "We're running out of time." He knows where Rachel's hands trembled as she set the papers down. 8 years. 8 years, and these letters had been sitting here, inches from discovery. She wanted to scream, to tear the attic apart, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We need to process this," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Every inch of this place. And we need Ellen Harper." Ellen Harper hadn't set foot in Willow Creek since 2019. She'd moved to a small apartment in Harrisburg, where she worked as a bookkeeper and tried to rebuild a life that didn't feel like betrayal. Every year on July 15th, she lit 2 candles, one for Clara, one for Sophie, and sat in silence until they burned out. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried up long ago, replaced by a hollow ache that never left. When Rachel's call came, Ellen's first instinct was to hang up. She'd heard too many false hopes, too many leads that led nowhere. But the mention of Sophie's drawing, of Clara's letters, was a knife to the heart. She was on. Us to Willow Creek by nightfall. The police station was a squat brick building, its walls lined with photos of missing children, most of them faded relics of cases long abandoned. Ellen sat across from Rachel in a cramped interview room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Rachel slid the drawing across the table, watching Ellen's face for a reaction. The older woman's eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked like she might collapse. "That's Sophie's," she whispered, tracing the creature's claws with a trembling finger. She was always drawing things like this. Sighed they came to her in dreams. Rachel nodded, keeping her voice gentle. "We found it in the attic, along with letters from Clara. They're dated after you reported them missing." Ellen, I need you to tell me everything you remember about that night. Anything, no matter how small. Ellen's gaze drifted to the drawing, her lips parting as if to speak, and closing again. She looked older than her 45 years, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights. I've told the police everything, she said finally. 100 times. We watched movies. I went to bed. They were gone when I woke up. Rachel leaned forward, her voice firm but kind. I know it's hard, but humor me. Walk me through it. What did you hear? What did you see? Ellen took a shaky breath, her hands twisting in her lap. It was hot that night. The AC was rattling, so I didn't hear much. The girls were laughing, arguing over which movie to watch next. Clara wanted Labyrinth, but Sophie was scared of the goblins. They settled on The Princess Bride. I kissed them goodnight, told Clara to lock up when they were done. She was responsible like that, always looking out for Sophie. Her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. I should have stayed up. I should have checked on them. Rachel reached across the table, her hand hovering near Ellen's, but not touching. You couldn't have known. Just keep going. Anything else? Ellen's eyes flicked to the ceiling, as if searching for answers in the cracked plaster. There was a noise. I didn't think much of it then. Like a thump, maybe from the attic. I figured it was the house settling, or maybe a raccoon. We'd had them before, scratching around up there. I didn't check. God, why didn't I? Check? Rachel exchanged a glance with Torres, who was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. The attic again. It kept coming up, like a thread she couldn't stop pulling. Did the girls ever go up there? She asked. Maybe to play or hide things. Ellen shook her head. They were scared of it. Clara said it smelled funny, and Sophie. She said it felt like someone was watching her. I told them it was just an old house, full of creaks and shadows. I should have listened. Rachel made a mental note to have the attic swept for DNA, fingerprints, anything. The letters suggested the girls had been alive for at least a few weeks. After their disappearance. But where? And why hide the letters? She slid a photocopy of one of Clara's notes across the table. This one mentions the man with no face. Did the girls ever talk about someone like that? A stranger, maybe? Ellen's face paled. No, they never said anything like that. Clara would have told me if someone was bothering them. She was protective, always watching out for Sophie. She paused, her brow furrowing. But Sophie's drawings. They started getting darker that summer. Creatures with no faces, just eyes and claws. I thought it was her imagination, you know. She was 9. Kids draw weird things. Rachel's pulse quickened. Sophie's drawings, Clara's letters, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still blurry. She thanked Ellen and promised to keep her updated, though she knew the words felt hollow. As Ellen left, clutching the photocopy like a lifeline, Rachel turned to Torres. We need to tear that attic apart. And I want to talk to Mia again. She was the last person to see them that night. Mia Callahan was 20 now, a junior at Penn State, but she still lived in Willow Creek during breaks. Rachel found her at the diner where Ellen used to work, sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone. Mia's dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes carried the guarded look of someone who'd grown up too fast. She'd been Clara's best friend, the kind of friend who knew every secret, every crush. But in 2017, Mia had been just another scared kid. Her statement to the police, a jumble of, I don't know, and everything was fine. Rachel slid into the booth across from her, keeping her tone casual. Thanks for meeting me, Mia. I know this is hard, dragging it all up again. Mia shrugged, but her fingers tightened around her mug. It's okay. I figured someone would call eventually. People don't forget stuff like this around here. Rachel nodded, pulling out a notebook. I'm going over the case with fresh eyes. You were at the Harper house that night, right? Dropped off a comic book? Yeah. Mia's voice was flat, but her eyes flicked to the side. Clara was obsessed with this X-Men issue. I borrowed it, so I brought it back. I was only there for, 10 minutes. Walk me through. Rachel said. What were they doing? Did anything seem off? Mia hesitated, her thumb tracing the rim of her mug. They were just being Clara and Sophie, building a blanket fort, arguing about movies. Clara was teasing Sophie about her crush on some kid at school. It was normal. I didn't see anything weird. Rachel leaned forward, her voice soft. But probing, nothing at all? No strange noises, no one hanging around outside? Mia's eyes darted away again, and Rachel caught at the flicker of something held back. Mia, she said, if there's anything you didn't tell the police back then, now's the time. It could help. Mia bit her lip, her shoulders hunching. I didn't lie or anything. It's just, there was this one thing. I didn't think it mattered, and I was scared of getting in trouble. Clara made me promise not to tell. Rachel's heart thudded. Tell me. Mia took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara said she saw someone in the woods that week. Not like a person exactly. She said it was tall, and it didn't have a face. Just eyes. She thought it was following them. I told her she was crazy, that it was probably just a deer or something, but she was freaked out. She made me swear not to tell her mom, said it would scare Sophie too much. Rachel's mind raced, connecting the dots to Clara's letters, Sophie's. Drawings, the man with no face. Did she say where she saw it? She asked ... in the woods behind their house, Mia said. There's a clearing back there, near the old mill. Clara used to take Sophie to play there. She said it was their secret spot. Rachel scribbled a note to check the clearing. The woods had been searched in 2017, but not thoroughly. Too many acres, too few resources. Anything else? She pressed. Mia shook her head, but her eyes were wet. I should have said something back then, but I was 12. I thought she was making it up. I thought they'd come back. Rachel reached across the table, squeezing Mia's hand. You were a kid. You did what you thought was right. This helps, Mia, more than you know. Back at the station, Rachel and Torres spread the case file across a conference table, the letters and drawing pinned to a corkboard. The attic search was underway, forensic techs dusting every surface, bagging anything that might hold a clue. Rachel's eyes kept drifting to Sophie's drawing, those red claws burning into her, the man with no face, the woods, the clearing. It was all too specific to be coincidence, but it didn't add up. Were the girls hiding from someone or something? And why the attic? Why leave the letters there, only to vanish? Torres tapped a photo of the Harper house's backyard, where the lawn gave way to dense forest. We need to search the clearing Mia mentioned. If Clara saw something out there, it might explain why they ran. Rachel nodded, but her mind was on the letters. Clara's words were careful, deliberate, like she was protecting someone. Sophie, maybe, or Ellen. But from what? She kept saying, they're watching, Rachel murmured. Who's they? And why didn't she tell her? Mom? Torres shrugged, his face grim. Kids keep secrets, especially if they're scared. Maybe they saw something they weren't supposed to. Rachel's phone buzzed a text from the forensics team. They'd found something else in the attic, a small carved wooden figure, no bigger than a fist, tucked inside a vent. It was crude, almost childlike, but its face was blank, just two deep gouges where eyes should be. Rachel's stomach twisted as she showed the photo to Torres. This wasn't in the original search, she said. Someone put it there after. Torres stared. At the image, his jaw tight. Or it was mist. That attic's a maze. Either way, it's connected. We need to figure out what the hell this thing is. Rachel didn't answer. She was already pulling on her jacket, her mind racing. The clearing, the attic, the letters, the figure, it was all leading somewhere. But the path was dark and twisting. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. "Get a team together," she said. "We're searching those woods at first light." The clearing was a half-mile hike through tangled underbrush, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp. Earth. Rachel led the way, her boots sinking into the mud, her flashlight cutting through the pre-dawn mist. Torres followed, along with 2 uniformed officers and a K-9 unit. The dog, a German shepherd named Rex, was tense, his ears pricked as if he sensed something the humans couldn't. The old mill loomed at the edge of the clearing, its rusted skeleton half swallowed by vines. The clearing itself was small, maybe 20 feet across, ringed by towering oaks. Rachel's eyes scanned the ground, looking for anything a scrap of fabric, a footprint, a sign the girls had been here. Rex strained at his leash, pulling toward a cluster of rocks near the mill. His handler, Officer Chun, let him lead, and Rachel followed, her heart pounding. The rocks formed a rough circle, moss-covered and ancient-looking, like they'd been placed there deliberately. Rex stopped at the largest one, pawing at the dirt. Chun knelt, brushing away leaves, and froze. "Detective," he called, his voice tight. "You need to see this." Rachel crouched beside him, her breath catching. Carved into the rock was a symbol, a circle, with 2 slashes, like eyes without a face. It matched the gouges on the wooden figure from the attic. Below it, barely visible under the dirt, was a small, rusted tin box. Rachel's gloved hands pried it open, revealing a bundle of drawings, all in Sophie's hand. Creatures, dozens of them, each more grotesque than the last. And at the bottom, a single note in Clara's writing. "We can't stay here." "He's coming." Rachel's blood ran cold. She looked at Torres, whose face was pale in the dim light. "This wasn't a random disappearance," she said, her voice barely steady. "They were hiding. From someone or something." The sun was rising now, casting long shadows across the clearing. Rex whined, his nose pressed to the ground, and Rachel felt the weight of 8 years pressing down on her. The answers were here, in the attic, in the woods, in the girl's own words. But every step forward felt like a step deeper into the dark. The morning sun clawed through the dense canopy of Willow Creek's woods, casting jagged, shifting shadows across the clearing that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Detective. Rachel Klein gripped the rusted tin box, its contents Sophie's chilling drawings and Clara's desperate notes searing into her mind like a brand. "We can't stay here. He's coming." The words were a raw, urgent echo, as if Clara had scrawled them in haste only hours ago, not 8 years past. Rachel's teens stood frozen around her, the air thick with an unspoken dread that pressed against their chests. Rex, the German shepherd canine, whimpered, his nose twitching toward the crumbling skeleton of the old mill, its rusted beams half swallowed by vines. Something lingered in this place, something that wasn't just the weight of memory. It was alive, watching, waiting. Rachel's radio crackled, shattering the oppressive silence. "Klein, you need to get back to the house." Officer Chun's voice came through, taut with urgency. "Forensics found something else in the attic." "You're not going to believe this." Rachel locked eyes with her partner, Detective Mark Torres, whose jaw was clenched, his dark eyes mirroring the unease that coiled in her gut. "Bag everything," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands as she slipped the tin box into an evidence bag. "We're heading back." Rex stays on point. She didn't trust the woods. Not after the eerie symbol carved into the rock. Not after Clara's cryptic warnings. The clearing felt like a stage, and they were players in a performance they didn't understand, their every move scrutinized by an unseen audience. Back at the Harper house, the attic was a hive of controlled chaos. Forensic technicians moved, with quiet precision, their gloved hands sifting through decades of dust, cobwebs, and forgotten relics. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and old wood, a cloying weight that seemed to cling to Rachel's skin as she climbed the creaking ladder. Dr. Emily Voss, the lead forensic analyst, was crouched near a vent in the far corner, the same vent where they'd found the carved wooden figure with its unsettling, eyeless face. Voss's face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line, her usual clinical detachment replaced by something closer to fear. "What is it?" Rachel asked, her voice low, as if speaking too loudly might wake something dormant in the shadows. Held up a small, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle and stained with age, the edges curling like dried leaves. "This was wedged behind the vent, deeper than the figure," she said, her voice tight. "It's Clara's. Her name's on the inside cover, and the entries, they're not just a kid's diary. There are record dates, times, places. She was tracking something, Rachel. Something she was terrified of." Rachel's heart thudded as she took the journal, its weight heavier than its size suggested, as if it carried the burden of Clara's fear. She opened it carefully, the pages crackling under her gloved fingers, revealing Clara's loopy cursive, now frantic and uneven, as if written in a hurry. The first entry was dated July 10th, 2017, 5 days before the girls vanished. July 10th, 2017. Sophie saw it again. "In the woods, near the mill. She says it's not a man, but it watches us. I told her it's just her imagination, but I saw it too. Tall, no face, just eyes that don't blink. It doesn't move when you look at it, but when you turn away, it's closer. Sophie's drawing it now. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, but I can't let her see that." Rachel's stomach twisted, a cold knot forming as she flipped through the pages. Each entry was more desperate, more detailed. Clara described sneaking out at night with Sophie, following faint trails through the woods, leaving markers, small piles of stones, ribbons tied to low branches, even a broken bracelet Sophie had loved. They were trying to understand what was stalking them, what Sophie kept seeing in her dreams and sketching in her book. The entries mentioned the clearing, the mill, and a door Clara couldn't find again after the first time she saw it. "It's not a real door," she wrote on July 12th. "It's like the air splits open, and he's there, waiting. I think he wants us to go through." The final entry, dated July 14th, 2017, the night of the movie night, made Rachel's blood run cold. "He knows we're watching him. Sophie's so scared she won't talk. I hid the letters in the attic so Mom won't find them. If we don't come back, it's because we had to go through the door. I'm sorry, Mom. I love you. I'll keep Sophie safe, I promise." Rachel closed the journal, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. "This changes everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They didn't run away. They weren't taken. They went somewhere." Torres, standing behind her, frowned, his arms crossed tightly across his chest. "What, like? They wandered into some fairy tale? Come on, Rachel. This is a kid's diary." She was 12, scared out of her mind, maybe delusional. Someone used that fear to lure them, someone real, not some faceless monster. Rachel shook her head, her mind racing as she clutched the journal. Then explain the letters, the drawings, the figure. Explain why they hid all this, why Clara went to such lengths to leave a trail. She wasn't stupid, Mark. She was protecting Sophie, documenting everything in case. Her voice faltered. "In case they didn't come back." She turned to Voss, her jaw tight. "Anything else?" Voss nodded, pointing to a pile of evidence bags on a folding table nearby. We found fibers in the vent blue cotton, consistent with children's clothing from 2017, and blood. Not much, just a few drops, but it's fresh enough to test. Too fresh for 8 years old. We're running DNA now, but it'll take a few hours. Rachel's chest tightened, her mind grappling with the impossibility. Blood, fresh after 8 years? It didn't make sense, but nothing about this case did. The pieces were forming a shape, something dark and otherworldly, and Rachel felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss. She handed the journal to Torres. Read it, every word. Then we're going back to the clearing. Whatever Clara was tracking, it started there. Ellen Harper sat in the Willow Creek police station, her hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of coffee that had long gone cold, the surface speckled with tiny bubbles. Rachel had called her back, unable to keep her away after the journals. Discovery. Ellen's eyes were red-rimmed, her face a battlefield of grief and a fragile, flickering hope. Rachel sat across from her in the cramped interview room. The journal's photocopied pages spread out on the table like a map to a lost world. She'd read every entry twice, memorizing Clara's careful descriptions. The way she wrote about Sophie's fear, her own fierce determination to shield her little sister from whatever was haunting them. Ellen, Rachel began, her voice soft but steady. Clara's journal mentions a door in the woods near the mill. Did the girls ever talk about something like that? A place they went, maybe a hideout they didn't tell you about? Ellen's fingers tightened around the cup, denting its flimsy sides. They had their secret spot by the mill, she said, her voice hoarse. I told them not to go out there alone, but Clara, she was stubborn, always had to be the brave one. She said it was their place, where Sophie could draw without anyone bothering her, where they could be free. Her voice broke, and she looked away, her gaze fixed on a crack in the wall as if it held answers. I should have gone with them. I should have checked. I was their mother, and I let them down. Rachel leaned forward, her tone gentle but firm, like a lifeline. You couldn't have known, Ellen. No one could. But this journal, it's a lead, a real one. Clara wrote about something she called the man with no face. She said it was watching them, following them. Does that ring any bells? Anything the girls might have mentioned, even in passing? Ellen's eyes widened, and for a moment, Rachel thought she might bolt from the room. Sophie's drawings, Ellen whispered, her voice trembling. They started that spring, before they disappeared. She'd wake up crying, saying she saw something in her dreams, a shadow with eyes, no face, just watching. I thought it was nightmares, maybe from sneaking scary movies at a friend's house. Clara promised she'd keep Sophie safe, said it was just stories they made up. I believed her. God, I believed her. Rachel nodded, scribbling a note in her worn notebook, her pen scratching loudly in the quiet room. Did they ever mention anyone else? Someone in town, maybe. Who made them uncomfortable? A neighbor? A teacher? Anyone? Ellen shook her head, but her hands trembled, betraying her calm. No, everyone loved the girls. They were bright, like stars in a dark sky. Clara was so smart, always reading, always asking questions. Sophie was quieter, but her drawings, they were magic. People in town would stop me at the diner, tell me how special they were. She paused, her brow furrowing. But that summer, Clara started locking her bedroom door at night. I thought she was just being a moody preteen, pushing me away. Now I wonder if she was scared, if she was trying to keep something out. Rachel's pulse quickened, her mind connecting Clara's locked door to the letters, the drawings, the figure. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on Ellen's arm, a small gesture of comfort. We're going to find out what happened, Ellen. I promise you that. It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, but the words came from a place deep inside her, a place that refused to let the girl's story end in silence. Ellen nodded, her eyes wet, clutching the photocopied journal pages like a lifeline. Just bring them back to me, please. The clearing near the old mill was different in the afternoon light, the shadows softer, but no less heavy, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. Rachel led a larger team this time, 6 officers, 2 canine units, and a forensic tech with a ground-penetrating radar unit. Clara's journal had mentioned the door near the mill's foundation, where the ground dipped into a shallow hollow, and Rachel was determined to find it, whatever it was. The team fanned out, their boots crunching on fallen leaves, searching for anything that matched Clara's descriptions. More carvings, more markers, a sign the girls had been here. Rex and the bloodhound, Daisy, were agitated, pacing in tight. Circles around the moss-covered rock with the carved symbol a circle, with 2 slashes, like eyes without a face. Rachel knelt beside it, tracing the slashes with her gloved finger. The cuts were deep, deliberate, not the work of a child's hand. She glanced at the mill, its rusted beams groaning in the wind, a skeletal reminder of Willow Creek's forgotten past. Clara's journal had pinpointed this spot, the hollow where the door appeared, and Rachel's gut told her it was close. Over here, she called, waving over the radar tech, a young woman named Patel, whose steady hands belied her nervous glance at the woods. Patel set up the equipment, her face focused as the machine hung to life, its screen flickering with layers of earth, roots, and something else, something solid, rectangular, buried just below the surface. Patel's eyes widened, her voice low. It's not natural. Looks like a trapdoor, maybe 2 feet by 3. Wood, possibly reinforced with metal. It's shallow, no more than a foot down. Rachel's pulse raced, her breath catching. Dig it up, she ordered, her voice sharp, cutting through the team's murmurs. The officers grabbed shovels, their movements quick but careful, the dirt falling away to reveal a weathered wooden hatch, its edges warped but intact. A rusted padlock hung from a latch, its metal brittle and broken, as if someone had pried it open years ago. Rachel's hands shook as she lifted the hatch, the hinges screaming in protest, releasing a gust of air that smelled of damp earth and something sharper, like decay. Below was a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for a child to crawl through. Rachel's flashlight revealed rough walls, scratched with more symbol circles, slashes, eyes that seemed to watch her back. Clara's markers were there too, a faded ribbon tied to a root, a small pile of stones stacked with care. This was their path, the one they'd taken that night. Rachel's heart pounded, a drumbeat of dread and determination. "Get the dogs in here," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. "And call for backup. We're going in." Torres grabbed her arm, his eyes fierce, his grip almost bruising. "Rachel, you don't know what's down there. Could be unstable, could be a trap. We need to wait, get a structural team." She shook him off, her jaw tight. "Clara and Sophie went through this. 2 kids, Mark. If they could do it, so can I." The tunnel was claustrophobic, the walls pressing in as Rachel crawled forward, her flashlight beam bouncing off the dirt, casting jagged shadows. Rex followed, his breath hot against her legs, his low whimpers echoing in the confined space. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out, opening into a small chamber. The air was thick, almost suffocating, heavy with the scent of rot and something metallic. The walls were covered in drawings, Sophie's creatures, scratched into the chew. Earth with a stick or a knife, their claws and eyeless faces vivid in the flashlight's glow. In the center of the chamber was a pile of bones, small and fragile, arranged in a spiral. Rachel's heart stopped, her breath catching, but a closer look revealed they weren't human rabbits. Birds, maybe squirrels, but the arrangement was deliberate, ritualistic, chilling. "Jesus," Torres muttered, crawling in behind her, his voice tight with unease. "What the hell is this place?" Rachel didn't answer, her eyes scanning the chamber. Her beam caught something else. A scrap of blue fabric, caught on a protruding root, its color faded but unmistakable. It matched the fibers from the attic. She bagged it, her hands steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. "They were here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is where they went." The chamber had no visible exits, but Clara's journal had described a door. That wasn't a door. Rachel ran her gloved fingers over the walls, feeling the rough earth give way to a smoother section, almost polished, like stone worn by time. She pressed harder, and the dirt crumbled, revealing a hidden panel, not wood or metal, but something else, cold and unyielding, carved with the same eyeless symbol. She pushed, and it slid aside with a low, grinding sound, revealing a second tunnel wider, its walls lined with roots that twisted like veins, pulsing faintly in the dim light. "Rachel." "Wait," Torres said, his voice sharp, but she was already moving, driven by a need she couldn't name, a pull that felt like instinct and madness intertwined. The tunnel stretched on, the air growing colder, the symbols more frequent, their slashes deeper, as if carved with growing desperation. Rex whined, his ears flat, refusing to go further, and Rachel didn't push him. She crawled alone, her flashlight flickering, the darkness seeming to fight back. Swallowing the beam dot at the end of the tunnel was a chamber unlike the first. The walls were smooth, almost glassy, reflecting her light in distorted fragments. The air hummed with a low, unnatural vibration that made her teeth ache. In the center was a circle of stones, identical to the one in the clearing, but larger. The slashes deeper, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. And in the middle of the circle was nothing, just a patch of air that shimmered, like heat rising from pavement, bending the world around it. Rachel's skin prickled, her breath catching. This was the door. Not a physical thing, but a rift. A tear in the fabric of reality. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and felt a pull gravity, but wrong, twisting her insides, tugging at her mind. Images flooded her Clara's face, pale and resolute. Sophie's drawings, vivid and alive. A shadow with eyes that burned like embers. She yanked her hand back, her heart pounding, her breath ragged. "Torres!" She shouted, her voice echoing strangely, as if the chamber was swallowing the sound. "Get down here." He appeared moments later, his face pale, his eyes wide as he stared at the shimmer. "What the hell is that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum. "I don't know," Rachel said, her voice shaking but resolute. But Clara and Sophie went through it, unsure of it. Torres grabbed her shoulder, his grip tight, grounding her. "You're not going in there, Rachel. We don't know what it is, where it goes. We need experts, equipment, a plan. We don't have time," she snapped, pulling free, her eyes locked on the shimmer. 8 years mark. They've been gone 8 years, and this is the first real lead. I'm not waiting for permission. Before he could stop her, she stepped into the shimmer. The world twisted, colors bleeding into each other. Her senses fracturing. Sound became light, touch became sound, and then she was falling, weightless. Her scream swallowed by an endless silence. Rachel woke on a forest floor, but it wasn't. Willow Creek. The trees were wrong too tall, their branches twisted into shapes that seemed to writhe, their bark more like bone than wood, cold and smooth under her fingers. The air was thick, not with heat, but with a pressure that made her ears pop, her head throb. Her flashlight was gone, but the sky above glowed with a sickly green light. casting the forest in a surreal, dreamlike haze. She scrambled to her feet, her heart racing, her breath shallow. The circle of stones was still there, but the slashes were glowing, pulsing like a heartbeat, their light seeping into the ground. "Clara!" she shouted, her voice muffled, as if the air was eating the sound, folding it back into itself. "Sophie!" No answer, but she felt it again, that pull stronger now, a current dragging her deeper into the forest. She stumbled forward, her hands brushing against trees that felt alive, their surfaces pulsing faintly under her touch. The ground was littered with small objects, ribbons tied to roots, stones stacked in patterns. A torn page from Sophie's sketchbook, its edges frayed, but the creature's claws still vivid. They'd been here, left a trail, a breadcrumb path through this impossible place. Rachel followed it, her mind racing with Clara's journal entries, the warnings about the man with no face, the door that wasn't a door. The trail led to a clearing, larger than the one in Willow Creek, ringed by stones carved with the same eyeless symbol, their surfaces slick with a strange, oily sheen. In the center stood a figure, not a man, but something else, something that didn't belong in her world. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its face a blank void except for two glowing slits where eyes should be. It didn't move, but Rachel felt its gaze, heavy and ancient, pinning her in place like a specimen under glass. Her breath caught, her body frozen, but her mind screamed to fight, to run, to do something. "Where are they?" she demanded, her voice shaking, but defiant, her hands clenched into fists. "Clara and Sophie." "What did you do to them?" The figure tilted its head, and a sound filled her mind, not words, but a pressure, a flood of images that crashed over her like a wave. Clara and Sophie, holding hands, stepping through the shimmer, their faces pale but resolute. Clara, shielding. Sophie from the figure, her jaw set, her eyes fierce. A promise, whispered in the dark. "We'll come back." But they hadn't. The images shifted, showing the girls in this forest, hiding in shadows, running through twisted trees, their faces etched with fear, but also defiance. Clara's voice, faint but clear, echoed in Rachel's mind. "We have to stop him." Rachel's knees buckled, but she forced herself to stand, her nails digging into her palms. "Are they alive?" she asked, her voice breaking, tears stinging her eyes. The figure didn't answer, but the air shimmered again, and Rachel saw them, Clara and Sophie. Older now, their faces hardened by years in this place, their eyes carrying a weight no child should bear. Clara, maybe 20, held a knife, its blade carved with the same eyeless symbol, her hands steady despite the exhaustion etched into her features. Sophie, 16 or 17, clutched a new sketchbook, its pages filled with maps, not monsters, her fingers stained with charcoal. They were fighting, not just to survive, but to close the door, to end whatever this place was. Rachel's vision blurred with tears, her chest aching with a mix of hope and despair. "I'm coming for you," she whispered, not sure if they could hear her, not sure if her voice could reach across worlds. She turned to the figure, her fear burning into rage, a fire that steadied her shaking hands. "You don't get to keep them." The figure moved then, faster than her eyes could. Follow, a blur of shadow and light. The world twisted again, colors fracturing, and Rachel was back in the chamber, Torres shaking her, his face frantic, his voice hoarse. "Rachel! Jesus, you were gone for 10 minutes. What happened? Where did you go?" She couldn't speak, her mind still reeling, the images of Clara and Sophie seared into her. The shimmer was gone, the stones cold and lifeless, their glow extinguished. But she knew what she'd seen, what she'd felt. The girls were alive, trapped in that other place, fighting a battle she couldn't comprehend. She grabbed Torres's arm, her voice hoarse, barely audible. "They're alive, Mark. They're out there, and they're fighting. We need to go back." The next week was a grueling marathon of preparation, doubt, and defiance. Rachel refused to let the case die, even as her superiors pushed back, her skepticism a wall she couldn't breach. The tunnel, the chamber, the stones, none of it made sense to them, and they wanted to write it off as a dead end, a delusion born of grief and desperation. But Rachel had seen the other side, felt its pull, its reality. She spent hours with Ellen, showing her the journal, the drawings, the scrap of blue fabric. Ellen's grief gave way to a fierce, fragile hope, and she demanded to help, to be there when they brought her girls home, her voice trembling but unyielding. Rachel and Torres assembled a small, trusted team: Patel, Voss, and a few officers who believed her, or at least trusted her enough to follow. They mapped the tunnel, catalogued every symbol, every marker. Voss dug into local folklore, uncovering tales of watchers, entities that guarded thresholds between worlds, appearing in stories from the region's earliest settlers. The tales were vague, dismissed as superstition, but they spoke of sacrifices, rituals, and children who vanished when the woods grew restless. The symbols matched descriptions in dusty archives, their origins lost to time, but tied to moments when the veil between worlds thinned. Rachel didn't care if it was myth or madness. It was real to Clara and Sophie, and that was enough. They returned to the chamber with equipment cameras, motion sensors. Even a priest named Father Daniel brought at Ellen's insistence, his face lined with quiet resolve. The shimmer reappeared when Rachel touched the stones, weaker now, flickering like a dying flame. She went through again, Torres at her side, both armed with ropes, trackers, and a determination that bordered on obsession. The other forest was the same, its trees twisting, its air heavy, but the figure was gone, its absence more unsettling than its presence. They found more signs of the girls' carvings in tree trunks, ribbons tied to branches, a knife buried in a tree, its blade etched with the eyeless symbol. Clara's work, Rachel was sure, a message left for anyone who followed. Trail led to a cave, its entrance hidden by a curtain of vines, the air inside cool and damp. Inside, they found a camp, tattered blankets, empty cans of food, Sophie's sketches pinned to the walls with rusted nails. A map, drawn in charcoal, showed a path back to the stones, with a note in Clara's hand. "We'll close it. Don't. Follow us." Rachel's heart sank, her breath catching. They were trying to protect their world, even if it meant staying trapped, sacrificing their way home to keep the figure from crossing. She and Torres searched the cave, calling their names, their voices echoing off the walls. The girls were gone, but their presence lingered in every sketch, every carving. The air grew heavy, the green light flickering, and Rachel knew their time was running out. She left a note of her own, carved into the cave wall with Torres's. "Pocket knife, we're coming back. Hold on." She didn't know if they'd see it, but she needed them to know they weren't forgotten. Back in Willow Creek, the case exploded into the public eye. The media descended, drawn by rumors of the tunnel, the occult symbols, the whispers of a supernatural mystery. Reporters camped outside the police station, their cameras flashing as Rachel and Torres emerged from the woods, their faces grim. Rachel ignored them, her focus on the girls, on the evidence they'd gathered. The DNA from the attic blood came back a match for Sophie, recent enough to prove she'd been alive within the last year. Rachel clung to that, a lifeline in the chaos, even as the shimmer grew weaker with each attempt to cross. She and Torres went through 3 more times, each journey shorter, the other forest fading like a dream, slipping away upon waking. The trees seemed less solid, the air thinner, the green light dimmer. On the final trip, they found a single drawing, left on a stone in the clearing. Sophie's creature, its claws no longer red but black, its eyes closed, as if sleeping. Below, it in Clara's writing, "We did it." It's closed. Rachel returned to the chamber, her hands shaking as she touched the stones. The shimmer was gone, the air still, the stones cold and lifeless. She sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face, her chest heaving with sobs she couldn't contain. Torres pulled her up, his voice steady, his hand firm on her shoulder. "They're alive, Rachel. They fought, and they won. We'll find another way." Ellen was waiting in the clearing when they emerged, her face a mask of hope and fear, her hands clutching Sophie's final drawing from the attic. Rachel handed her the new drawing, her voice breaking as she spoke. "They're out there, Ellen. They closed the door to keep us safe, to keep that thing from coming through. But they're alive. I know it." Ellen clutched the drawing, her sobs echoing through the woods, raw and unfiltered. Rachel stood beside her, staring at the mill, its rusted beams silhouetted against the fading light, the rocks with their silent symbols, the sky that seemed too vast, too empty. The girls were gone, but not lost. Somewhere in a world beyond. Her reach, Clara and Sophie were together, their bond unbroken, their courage a beacon in the dark. Rachel swore she'd find them, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. She'd seen the other side, felt its pull, and she knew the truth. The door was closed, but not forever. The woods were silent now, but she felt the girl's presence, a whisper in the shadows, a promise that they hadn't given up. Neither would she.